When 10-year-old Cameron Mitchell stood at the corner of Riverside Drive and Highway 52 at 6:15 on a Tuesday morning in late September, waiting for a school bus that would never come because his mother had spent the route money on cigarettes and lottery tickets again, he didn't expect the rumble of a motorcycle engine to change everything. The boy had walked this 5-mile route to Oak Ridge Elementary so many times over the past year that he knew every crack in the sidewalk, every house where a dog barked, every stretch where the shoulder disappeared and he had to walk in tall grass to avoid traffic. He'd become invisible to the drivers who passed him, just another kid trudging along the road, backpack bouncing against his thin shoulders, face down against the wind. But on that particular morning, when Travis Grind Morrison pulled his Harley Road King onto the shoulder 50 feet ahead and killed the engine, Cameron's carefully constructed routine of silent endurance was about to collide with the kind of adult who noticed things other people had learned to ignore. Travis was 46 years old, vice president of the Riverbend Riders Motorcycle Club out of Cedar Falls, Iowa, a man with a weathered face that mapped 23 years of riding in all seasons and a gray-streaked beard that reached his collarbone. He wore black leather with the club's patches stitched across the back, a design showing 2 motorcycles crossing over a river bridge, and beneath it, the rocker that read Iowa. He'd been riding this stretch of Highway 52 every Tuesday morning for the past month on his way to a construction job site in Dubuque, and for the past month, he'd seen the same kid walking the same route at the same time. Always alone, always moving with the kind of determined trudge that suggested this wasn't occasional, but routine. The first time Travis had seen the boy, he'd thought maybe the kid lived close by and was just walking a few blocks. The second time, he'd started paying attention to landmarks and realized the boy was still walking 2 miles later when Travis passed him again on his return route that evening. By the third week, Travis had timed it. The boy left the corner of Riverside and 52 at 6:15 in the morning and didn't reach Oak Ridge Elementary until nearly 7:30, which meant the kid was walking at least 5 miles each way, 10 miles total every single school day. And nobody seemed to notice or care. Travis had grown up poor in a town not much different from this one, had spent his own childhood being the kid everyone overlooked, the one whose clothes didn't quite fit, and whose lunch came from whatever the cafeteria gave away for free. He knew what it looked like when a child was fending for himself, when the adults who were supposed to be paying attention had checked out. And he knew that most people would drive past a walking kid and assume someone else was handling it, that it wasn't their business, that the boy probably had a parent who knew where he was. But Travis also knew that assumptions like that were how kids fell through cracks that turned into canyons. So on that Tuesday morning when he saw Cameron standing at the corner again, small and alone in the pre-dawn cold, Travis made a decision that would turn a 5-mile walk into a daily ride and eventually into the kind of chosen family that proved blood wasn't the only thing that made someone show up. Travis pulled his Harley onto the shoulder and waited while Cameron approached, the boy's steps slowing with obvious wariness. Adults who stopped to talk to kids walking alone were either helpful or dangerous, and a 10-year-old learned quickly to assess which category someone fell into before getting too close. Travis stayed on his bike, keeping distance, and when Cameron was about 15 feet away, he called out in a voice that was loud enough to carry but not threatening. "Hey there, buddy. You heading to Oak Ridge Elementary?" Cameron stopped, his grip tightening on his backpack straps, his face a mask of careful neutrality that no 10-year-old should have to wear. "Yes, sir. That's a long walk. You do this every day?" The boy hesitated, clearly calculating whether the truth would get him or his mother in trouble, then nodded. "Most days." Travis felt something tighten in his chest. Most days meant not every day, which meant sometimes this kid didn't make it to school at all, probably on days when the weather was too bad or he was too tired or something else had gone wrong at home. "You got a ride you could take instead? A bus or someone who could drive you?" Cameron's jaw tightened and his eyes dropped to the pavement. "The bus costs money. My mom needs the money for other stuff. So I walk. It's okay, I don't mind." The lie was so transparent it hurt. Of course the kid minded. Of course walking 10 miles a day was exhausting and cold and lonely and unfair, but Cameron had learned the script that poor kids learned early, the one where you pretended everything was fine because admitting it wasn't only made adults uncomfortable and didn't actually fix anything. Travis made a decision in that moment, the kind that couldn't be unmade once spoken. How about I give you a ride today? I'm heading right past your school anyway, and it's no trouble. I've got an extra helmet in my saddlebag. Cameron's eyes went wide, a flicker of hope breaking through the careful neutrality before caution reasserted itself. I'm not supposed to get in cars with strangers. Smart rule, Travis said. Your mom teach you that? The boy nodded. Good mom for teaching you that. But I'm not asking you to get in a car. I'm asking if you want to ride on my motorcycle, and before you say yes or no, you should know my name and where I'm going. I'm Travis Morrison. I'm vice president of the Riverbend Riders Motorcycle Club, and I work construction in Dubuque. I've been riding this road for a month, and I've seen you walking every single time. Figured today I'd stop and offer a ride so you don't have to walk in the cold. You can say no. You can keep walking, and I'll leave you alone. But if you want a ride, the offer stands. Cameron studied Travis with the kind of intensity that children developed when they'd learned to read adults for safety, looking for the signs that someone's intentions matched their words. Whatever he saw in Travis's face must have passed the test because his shoulders relaxed slightly and he took 2 cautious steps closer. You really go right past Oak Ridge? Right past it. I can drop you at the front door and you'll have time to get breakfast in the cafeteria before first bell. How do you know I get cafeteria breakfast? Because you're a smart kid who knows where to find food when you need it. Travis kept his voice gentle, matter of fact, not pitying. Nothing wrong with that. I lived on cafeteria breakfast when I was your age. Sometimes it was the only meal I got all day. Cameron's expression shifted, something in Travis's honesty cracking through the walls he'd built. Okay, I'll take the ride. Just for today, though. My mom might figure something out soon. Travis didn't argue, didn't point out that if the mom hadn't figured something out in the year Cameron had apparently been walking, she probably wasn't going to start now. He just pulled the spare helmet from his saddlebag, a full-face helmet that was way too big for Cameron's small head, but would keep him safe, and showed the boy how to climb onto the back of the bike, where to put his feet, how to hold on to Travis's waist. The kid's hands were freezing even through Travis's leather jacket, small fingers gripping tight with a mix of nervousness and excitement. You ever been on a motorcycle before? Travis asked. Cameron shook his head, the oversized helmet wobbling. Then, this is going to be a good memory. Hold on tight and trust me. We'll take it slow. They pulled onto Highway 52, and Travis kept his speed reasonable. No showing off, no unnecessary risks, just a smooth ride that let Cameron feel the rumble of the engine and the wind and the strange freedom of moving fast without being enclosed in metal and glass. He felt the boy's grip loosen slightly as they rode, tension giving way to something that might have been wonder, and when they pulled up to Oak Ridge Elementary 23 minutes after leaving the corner of Riverside Drive, Cameron climbed off the bike with a grin that transformed his whole face. That was the coolest thing ever. Travis felt his throat tighten. Glad you liked it, kid. You get yourself some breakfast and have a good day at school. Cameron started toward the building, then turned back. Mr. Travis, if you happen to be driving this way tomorrow, I'll probably be at that same corner. Just so you know, I'll keep that in mind, Travis said. The next morning, Travis was at the corner of Riverside and 52 at 6:15. Cameron was already waiting, backpack on, face lighting up when he saw the motorcycle approach. The morning after that, Travis was there again. And the morning after that. By the end of the first week, it had become routine. By the end of the second week, Cameron had started talking during the rides, telling Travis about school, about his teacher, Mrs. Hendricks, who was nice but gave too much homework, about his best friend Marcus, who had moved away over the summer, about how his mom worked nights at a truck stop diner and slept most of the day and didn't always remember to buy groceries. Travis listened and didn't judge and didn't report anything to authorities because he knew how that system worked, knew that sometimes it made things worse instead of better, knew that what Cameron needed most wasn't intervention but consistency, someone who showed up. By the third week, other Riverbend riders started asking Travis why he was leaving for work so early every morning. And Travis told them about Cameron, about the 5-mile walk, about a kid who'd been invisible to everyone who passed him. The club's president, a man called Ironside, who'd been riding for 30 years and had raised 3 kids of his own, listened to the story and then made a decision that would expand one man's kindness into a community's responsibility. "If you can't make it one morning, you let me know," Ironside said. "One of us will cover the ride. That kid doesn't walk anymore. Not on our watch." And that was how Cameron Mitchell went from walking alone to being driven by a rotating crew of bikers who showed up every single morning at 6:15, rain or shine, cold or heat, without fail. Some mornings it was Travis. Some mornings it was Ironside or Wrench or Bear or Smokey, men with road names and leather vests who looked intimidating to strangers, but who treated Cameron with the kind of steady respect that told him he mattered. They started bringing him breakfast on mornings when the cafeteria was closed. They made sure his backpack had supplies when they noticed he was using a broken zipper and torn straps. They asked about his homework and his grades and whether he needed help with anything. And slowly, carefully, Cameron started to trust that these men weren't going to disappear, that their presence wasn't temporary charity, but something more permanent. One Friday in late October, Travis picked Cameron up for the morning ride and noticed the boy was quieter than usual, his grip on Travis's waist tighter, his face pressed against the leather of Travis's back in a way that suggested he was trying not to cry. When they reached the school, Travis killed the engine and turned to look at the boy. "You okay, Cameron?" Cameron's eyes were red and he was blinking hard against tears. "My mom said I have to stop taking rides from you. She said people are talking and it makes her look bad, that she's a bad mom for not driving me herself. And she's mad because someone told her I've been eating breakfast with bikers, and she thinks you're trying to take me away from her." Travis felt anger flash hot and immediate, anger at a mother who cared more about how things looked than whether her kid was safe and fed. But he kept his voice calm for Cameron's sake. "We're not trying to take you away from anyone, buddy. We're just making sure you get to school and that you're okay. There's nothing wrong with accepting help." "I know, but she said if I keep riding with you, she's going to call the police and say you're bothering me. And I don't want her to do that because you're not bothering me. You're helping me. You're the only person who's helped me." The boy's voice broke, and Travis pulled him into a hug, this small kid who'd been carrying way too much weight for way too long. "Listen to me, Cameron. If your mom doesn't want you riding with us anymore, we'll respect that. But that doesn't mean we're going to stop watching out for you. You understand? You're not alone in this." Cameron nodded against Travis's shoulder, and Travis made a decision that he knew might cross lines, but felt necessary anyway. "When you get home today, you tell your mom that I want to meet her. You tell her that the Riverbend Riders want to have a conversation about how we can help without making her feel bad. You think she'd be willing to do that?" "I don't know. She doesn't like talking to people." "Then you give her my number and tell her I'll call her. And Cameron, if things get bad at home, if you need help, you call me. Day or night. You understand?" Cameron took the slip of paper with Travis's number written on it and tucked it into his backpack like it was something precious. That afternoon, Travis got a call from a woman whose voice was defensive and sharp, with the kind of anger that came from shame. "This is Diane Mitchell. My son said you wanted to talk to me." "Yes, ma'am," Travis said. "I wanted to introduce myself properly and explain what we've been doing and why. We're not trying to overstep or make you feel like you're not taking care of Cameron. We just saw a kid who needed a ride and we wanted to help." Diane's voice cracked slightly. "People are saying I'm a bad mother, that I'm letting strangers raise my kid. I'm not a bad mother. I work 60 hours a week to keep a roof over our heads. I just can't afford the bus and I can't drive him because I don't have a car that runs and I don't know what else I'm supposed to do." Travis heard the exhaustion and desperation in her voice and softened his tone. "Ma'am, nobody's saying you're a bad mother, but your son is walking 10 miles a day and that's hard on a kid. The Riverbend Riders would like to keep giving him rides if you'll let us. And if there's other ways we can help, groceries or bills or finding resources, we'd like to do that too. We take care of our community. That's what we do." There was a long silence. Then Diane said quietly, "Why would you do that for people you don't even know?" "Because we've all been where you are," Travis said, "and because Cameron's a good kid who deserves to have people show up for him. Let us help. Please." Diane agreed, reluctantly, and over the following weeks, the Riverbend Riders became a quiet presence in Cameron and Diane's life. They continued the morning rides. They helped Diane fix her car so she could get to work more easily. They connected her with job resources that paid better than the truck stop. They made sure Cameron had what he needed for school. And slowly, Diane stopped seeing them as judgment and started seeing them as the support system she'd never had. By December, Cameron had stopped walking to school entirely. By spring, Diane had a better job and could afford the bus money, but Cameron still chose to ride with the Riverbend riders most mornings because it had become more than transportation. It had become family. When Cameron turned 11 in March, the Riverbend riders threw him a birthday party at their clubhouse, a converted warehouse on the edge of Cedar Falls that smelled like motor oil and leather, and had walls covered in photographs of rides and brothers who'd passed on. Cameron had never had a real birthday party before, had never blown out candles on a cake while people sang to him, had never opened presents that someone had actually thought about and chosen specifically for him. The club gave him a custom leather vest, youth-sized, with his name stitched on the front and a patch on the back that read, Honorary Riverbend Rider. It was too big for him now, sized for the teenager he'd eventually become, but Cameron wore it anyway with fierce pride, the sleeves hanging past his hands, the hem nearly to his knees. Diane stood in the corner of the clubhouse watching her son laugh with men who'd become his uncles, his mentors, his chosen family, and she cried quietly into a napkin while Ironside's wife put an arm around her shoulders. You're allowed to accept help, the woman said gently. You're allowed to let people care about your boy. You don't have to do everything alone. I was so angry when they started giving him rides, Diane admitted. I felt like they were saying I wasn't enough, that I was failing him. You were doing your best with what you had, and your best kept him housed and fed and safe. But best doesn't mean you have to refuse help when it's offered. These men see Cameron as part of their community now. Let them be part of his village. Diane nodded and wiped her eyes, and when Cameron ran over to show her the pocket knife Travis had given him, a small Swiss Army knife with his initials engraved on the handle, she hugged him tight and told him she was proud of him, proud that he'd been brave enough to accept a ride from a stranger who turned out to be exactly who Cameron needed. As spring turned to summer, Cameron started spending more time at the clubhouse. The Riverbend riders taught him basic motorcycle maintenance, how to change oil and adjust chain tension and read engine diagnostics. They taught him workshop safety and let him help with repair projects. They took him on short rides through the countryside, always with proper gear, always with adult supervision, letting him feel the freedom and brotherhood that came with being part of something larger than himself. Travis remained Cameron's primary contact, the one who picked him up most mornings, the one Cameron called when he needed advice or help with homework or just wanted to talk. But the whole club had adopted the boy in the way that motorcycle clubs sometimes did, creating a network of support that caught Cameron every time he stumbled. When Cameron started 6th grade that fall, he was a different kid than the one who'd been walking Highway 52 alone a year earlier. He stood taller, spoke with more confidence, smiled easier. His grades had improved because he had adults checking his homework and helping him study. His attendance was perfect because he had reliable transportation. His clothes fit better because the club made sure Diane had resources to buy what Cameron needed. But more than any of that, Cameron had learned that he mattered, that his presence in the world was noticed and valued, that asking for help wasn't weakness, but wisdom. In October, on the anniversary of that first ride, Travis picked Cameron up as usual, but instead of heading straight to school, he took a detour to the corner of Riverside Drive and Highway 52 where they'd first met. He killed the engine, and they sat there together in the early morning light, watching cars pass by on the road where Cameron used to walk alone. You know what I think about every time I ride past this spot, Travis said. Cameron shook his head. Travis continued, I think about all the people who drove past you last year and didn't stop, all the people who saw a kid walking alone and assumed it wasn't their problem. And I think about how easy it would have been for me to do the same thing, to tell myself someone else would help you, to mind my own business. Cameron was quiet for a moment, then said softly, Why didn't you? Why did you stop when everyone else didn't? Travis thought about that question, about all the complicated reasons that had made him notice one walking boy when hundreds of drivers hadn't. Because I used to be you, he said finally. I used to be the kid everyone looked past, and I know what it feels like to think nobody cares whether you make it or not. I stopped because I wished someone had stopped for me when I was your age, and because once you see someone who needs help, you can't unsee them. You have a choice to make in that moment. You can drive past and tell yourself it's not your responsibility, or you can pull over and see if maybe you're exactly the person who's supposed to help. "I'm glad you pulled over," Cameron said. "Me too, kid." They rode to school, and Cameron went to class and Travis went to work, and the day unfolded like any other. But that conversation stayed with Cameron, became part of how he understood the world and his place in it. The idea that being seen mattered, that one person choosing to care could change everything, that family wasn't just the people you were born to, but the people who showed up when you needed them. When Cameron was 13, Diane got a promotion at work that required moving to Des Moines for better pay and opportunities. She'd been dreading telling Cameron, knowing how much the Riverbend Riders meant to him, knowing that leaving Cedar Falls meant leaving the community that had saved both of them. But when she finally sat him down to explain the move, Cameron surprised her. "That's really good, Mom. You deserve that promotion. You've worked so hard. What about your club? What about Travis and the guys?" "They're not going anywhere," Cameron said. "Travis already told me that distance doesn't matter, that I'm family and family is forever. He said they'll visit and I can come back for summers and that I better call every Sunday, or he's driving to Des Moines to check on me himself." Diane felt tears prick her eyes. "You've grown up so much." "That's because I had good teachers," Cameron said simply. The move happened in June. The Riverbend Riders helped load the moving truck and drove Diane and Cameron to Des Moines in a convoy of motorcycles that made their new neighbors stare in amazement. Travis helped them unpack, made sure their new apartment was secure, gave Cameron a new phone with unlimited minutes so they could stay in touch, and hugged the boy hard before leaving. "You call me if you need anything," Travis said. "And I mean anything. School problems, friend problems, mom problems, bike problems, life problems. You understand?" "I understand," Cameron said. "And Travis, thank you for everything, for seeing me when I was invisible, for stopping when everyone else drove past, for showing me what it looks like when someone cares." Travis's voice was rough when he answered. "You were never invisible, kid. You were just waiting for the right people to look." Cameron kept his promise to call every Sunday. The conversation started as brief check-ins, but grew longer as Cameron got older, became the kind of talks where he asked Travis for advice about school and friends and girls and what it meant to be a good man. Travis listened and offered perspective and reminded Cameron that he was proud of him, that the Riverbend Riders were proud of him, that he was becoming exactly the kind of person his younger self had needed. During summer breaks, Cameron returned to Cedar Falls and spent weeks at the clubhouse, working on bikes, going on rides, helping with community events. The club had started a program called the Morning Ride Initiative, inspired by Cameron's story, where they identified kids in the community who needed transportation to school and provided it. Over 5 years, they'd helped 32 children get to school reliably, and every single one of those kids knew Cameron's story, knew that their rides existed, because one boy had been brave enough to accept help from a stranger, and one man had been observant enough to offer it. When Cameron turned 16, Travis showed up in Des Moines on his birthday with a gift that made the boy's hands shake as he unwrapped it. It was a helmet, brand new, custom painted with the Riverbend Riders logo and Cameron's name. Travis held out a set of keys. "There's a bike waiting for you in Cedar Falls, a 250 cubic centimeter starter bike that we rebuilt together, even though you weren't there for most of it. When you turn 18 and get your motorcycle license, it's yours. Until then, it sits in the clubhouse with your name on it, waiting." Cameron couldn't speak. He just hugged Travis and cried the way he'd cried that first morning years ago when Travis had offered him a ride and he'd realized someone actually saw him. 2 years later, on Cameron's 18th birthday, he rode that motorcycle for the first time with Travis beside him on the same Road King that had pulled over on Highway 52 7 years earlier. They rode from Cedar Falls to Des Moines, 230 miles of highway and back roads, stopping at the corner of Riverside Drive and Highway 52 to take a photo that Travis later framed and hung in the clubhouse. The photo showed 2 men on motorcycles, one older with a gray beard and weathered face, one younger with his whole life ahead of him, both wearing leather vests with the Riverbend Riders patches, both smiling the way people smile when they know they're exactly where they belong. Beneath the photo, Travis mounted a small plaque with an inscription Cameron had written. "Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is accept help from a stranger. And sometimes the most important thing you can do is stop for someone who needs to be seen." Cameron went to college in Iowa City, studying social work with a focus on child welfare. He wrote his senior thesis on the importance of community support systems for at-risk youth, using his own story as a case study but changing names to protect privacy. After graduation, he got a job with the Iowa Department of Human Services, working specifically with children in situations similar to his own, kids who were falling through cracks because the adults around them were overwhelmed or absent or struggling with their own problems. He became the person who noticed when a child showed up to school hungry or walked too far or wore clothes that didn't fit. He became the person who stopped instead of driving past, and he taught other people to do the same, to pay attention, to trust their instincts when something felt wrong, to understand that one person caring could legitimately save a life. Travis continued riding, continued showing up at the corner of Riverside and 52 every time he passed it, continued being vice president of the Riverbend Riders until age and arthritis forced him to step back from leadership roles. But he never stopped being the man who pulled over for kids who needed help, who organized the Morning Ride Initiative, who reminded his brothers that their patches meant something beyond leather and ink, that they meant responsibility to their community, to the vulnerable, to the ones everyone else overlooked. When Cameron turned 25, he stood up at a Riverbend Riders meeting and asked permission to prospect, to earn his full patches, to become an official member of the club that had saved his life. The vote was unanimous. He prospected for a year, proving himself through work and dedication and the kind of character that made older members nod with approval. And when they finally gave him his full patches at a ceremony attended by every Riverbend rider who could make it, Travis was the one who placed the vest on Cameron's shoulders, the same vest they'd given him at 11, now fitted properly to the man he'd become. "Your father would have been proud," Travis said quietly, then corrected himself. "I'm proud. We're all proud." Cameron wore those patches the way he'd worn that first vest, with fierce pride and deep gratitude, and on the back, along with the club logo and the Iowa rocker, he'd added one custom patch that told his story without words. A simple image of a motorcycle stopped on a highway shoulder, and beneath it, a date. The morning Travis Morrison had pulled over and changed everything. The story of Cameron and Travis became legend in Iowa, shared at schools and community centers and social services conferences. It became a case study in how community intervention worked, how informal support networks could catch children before they fell too far. It became a reminder that heroism didn't require badges or titles or special training, just the willingness to notice when someone needed help and the courage to offer it, even when it was easier to look away. Cameron and Travis rode together for another 20 years. They did charity runs and community events and mentorship programs. They showed up for kids who needed them and taught other adults to do the same. And every year on the anniversary of that first ride, they returned to the corner of Riverside Drive and Highway 52, stood where a 10-year-old boy had once waited alone in the cold, and remembered that one decision to stop, one offer of help, one act of seeing another human being had created ripples that spread farther than either of them could have imagined. When Travis died at 71, surrounded by his Riverbend Riders brothers and the man who'd once been a walking boy on Highway 52, Cameron gave the eulogy. He talked about the morning a stranger had pulled over and offered a ride. He talked about how that ride had turned into 7 years of daily support and then a lifetime of brotherhood. He talked about what it meant to be seen, to be valued, to matter to someone, and he ended with the words that had become his life's mission. If you see someone struggling, stop. If you see a child who needs help, offer it. If you see a person trying to be invisible because they think nobody cares, show them they're wrong. Because the difference between a child who falls through the cracks and a child who makes it is often just one person who decides to pay attention, one person who pulls over instead of driving past, one person who says, "I see you and you matter, and I'm not going to let you walk alone." Travis Morrison was that person for me. Be that person for someone else. The Riverbend Riders carried Travis's casket on a trailer behind his Road King, the same bike he'd ridden for 30 years, the same bike that had stopped on Highway 52 and changed a boy's life. Cameron rode behind them, leading a procession of motorcycles that stretched for 2 miles. Every rider there because Travis had taught them that brotherhood meant showing up, that community meant caring for the vulnerable, that the patches they wore obligated them to be better men. At the burial, Cameron placed his original honorary Riverbend rider vest on Travis's casket, the too big vest he'd worn at 11, the one that had made him feel seen and valued and part of something larger than himself. He whispered words only Travis would have heard. "Thank you for stopping. Thank you for seeing me. Thank you for teaching me that family is who shows up." And then he stood with his brothers, with the community Travis had built, with the legacy of one man who decided that a walking child mattered enough to pull over, and he made a promise that he'd spend the rest of his life keeping. Every kid who needs a ride gets one. Every child who needs to be seen gets noticed. Every person who's trying to be invisible gets told they matter. Because that's what Travis would have done, and that's what family does. They show up, they stop, they see you, and they never let you walk alone.